Vitality.
Vitality Unfiltered.
Unfiltered.
With David Bauder.
And we're back for another episode of Vitality Unfiltered. I'm David Bauder, your host. With me today from Weight Loss and Vitality, from Riverhead, New York, Dr. Shah, and from Washington, D.C., nurse practitioner Stephanie Lattimore. Today's conversation, peptides. You cannot go on any social media platform for any length of time without being slapped in the face with peptides, okay? There's so much traffic out there, some from questionable resources, some legitimate, about peptides have changed somebody's life. Peptides can do this. New peptides coming out. So today we're going to kind of like discuss what a peptide is, kind of try to give some real factual information so the listeners can understand exactly what's going on in the peptide market today. So Dr. Shah, what is a peptide?
So very simply, a peptide is a short chain of amino acids that impact some known pathway or mechanism in the human body. So a lot of these peptides that are on the market have some mechanistic reason for being produced. They usually, improve, like GLP-1s, for example, are probably the most commonly prescribed peptide today.
Yep.
Impact satiety signaling, food noise signaling, glucose regulation, insulin secretion. Another common one is growth hormone secretagogues like sermorelin, tesamorelin. And then what differentiates these peptides probably is that, these are FDA-approved peptides for specific indications, but then very commonly being used for kind of off-label purposes. And then there's kind of like everything else. There's like a couple in the pipeline that will probably work out. Then there's like some that have only animal data. And then there was a bunch that were on formulary at compound pharmacies, got banned, and now recently got unbanned. And this is where the space has gotten a little murky.
Yeah, the space is really crazy right now. It really is. And I think that's what we need to just make sure we pull out in this episode is just a real informative type presentation here so the listeners can understand. It's like, yeah. So let's start off with thinking from the top. One of the oldest and most common peptides out there is sermorelin. Sometimes people call it sermorelin, same thing. You got some experience with that.
So I've been prescribing the peptide sermorelin for a couple years now, in addition to the GLPs, which are peptides. Sermorelin's the only other peptide that I prescribe because right now it's really the safest, one of the oldest, very effective, a lot of good data, FDA approved, human growth hormone, not analog, but word of the day.
Yeah, secretagogue.
Acts on the natural human growth hormone in the body to kind of optimize you and to produce that. Really beneficial for those, I want to say 30, 40, 50s and up maybe. Weight training, high performance activity, weight loss. It can definitely be an adjuvant in the weight loss regimen a patient is on to really optimize patients to tap into that human growth hormone that declines as we age. So sermorelin's tried and true. I feel very safe prescribing it. Most patients are good candidates. Very few contraindications. Injectable into the adipose, either daily or on a regimen, every 3 days once you get to that kind of maintenance stage. But sermorelin, love it. What else do you guys know about it?
Just a quick comment on sermorelin. It's just really important to emphasize, like, there's a known mechanism of action with sermorelin, and not to be confused with growth hormone abuse, right? Growth hormone abuse in the PED space, bodybuilding space, was the injection of exogenous growth hormone. So the chance that you could get super physiologic levels of growth hormone was high, right? And obviously to a certain therapeutic benefit, but also there are risks, right? If there's a known cancer in your body, it can grow faster. If you have sleep apnea, that can get worse. If you have carpal tunnel already, the soft tissue there can grow, that can get worse, things like that. Whereas when you use a growth hormone secretagogue and the compound sermorelin, or the other one that's very popular now, tesamorelin as well, it incentivizes your brain to make as much growth hormone as it can, right? It just kind of like turns the volume up of what your brain could do or would do. And then downstream, obviously, growth hormone will impact IGF-1 and then all of the downstream effects from that. So it's worth discussing the risks and benefits, but a cycle of sermorelin or tesamorelin is not a bad idea as an adjunct to weight loss.
Yeah, it works really well in that certain group of patients, specifically if they're looking for some lean muscle mass. I always think of sermorelin kind of like as the general peptide. You got peptides out there that focus, and we can talk about that in a bit. We got peptides that focus on joints, tendons, ligaments, mitochondria, dysregulation. You got peptides that work with hair and skin. I mean, they're all over. And honestly, I think that's the future of medicine where we're going is there's going to be peptides that's going to, we're going to dial stuff in if this stuff can ever get pushed through. Right?
Yes.
It's got to get pushed through, which we'll cover in a second. But in regards to sermorelin, tesamorelin and sermorelin are really the only FDA-approved peptides. All right, when we talk about growth hormone. Just a little background on sermorelin. That was originally established in the early 1990s, went through all the clinical studies, was originally established for a pediatric treatment for kids that couldn't grow. Largely in the mid-1990s, it was replaced when growth hormone or omnitrope, genotrope, when those really started, the synthetic growth hormones came out, which you were alluding to, which are the ones that potentially have the bad side effects. It was largely replaced and it wasn't really available anymore. So it kind of fell off the schedule and it was just kind of disappeared. But integrative functional medicine never forgot about it. We always kept this kind of in the space and it's very, very safe, just, like just how you described it is like, it's really, it's just really hard to hurt somebody with it. I mean, it's just like, it's a pretty safe treatment for especially somebody that's trying to optimize body composition. Why didn't you talk a little bit more about tesamorelin? All right, so where was it developed from?
So it's funny. Tesamorelin has a very specific indication. I honestly don't know what the genesis is of some of these medications, but it specifically is for the removal of visceral adiposity in HIV patients on antiretroviral therapy. One of the side effects of certain antiretroviral therapies is the development of visceral adiposity. So tesamorelin has been purported to be a slightly more potent version of sermorelin, exact same mechanism of action, like very recent FDA approval and human data in adults, which is really nice. And that's kind of like what's become the off-label use from 503A compounding pharmacies for tesamorelin. Based on kind of market rates, it looks like tesamorelin is slightly more expensive than sermorelin, but I'm finding patients who get really good therapeutic benefit from sermorelin and want to try tesamorelin, try it. Some notice a difference, some don't. But again, just another option.
Before it was, so tesamorelin now is available in some compounding 503B pharmacies out there. But prior to that, the brand, oh my God, it was like $6,000-$7,000 a month was the cost of this stuff. I mean, it was profoundly expensive, and it was
brand new on the market.
New on the market, right? And it just was like it was just hard to get. And then just recently, a few compounding pharmacies have been picking that up and go with that. I guess then we can kind of talk about what was available and then what got unavailable. All right, before we get to kind of like some other ones. And routinely, prior to the FDA getting involved with peptide therapy 3 years ago or so, was I think about the timeline, 2.5 years ago, peptide therapy represented, at Weight Loss and Vitality, peptide therapy, it represented a big market share of our patients. It really did. I mean, AOD 9604, BPC 157, CJC 1295, these were big peptides for us. And those peptides are something. But when we were prescribing them, they were coming from a legitimate 503B, 503A pharmacy. Patients got good results, and we used them a lot. And then just recently, so if we break that down, without going through, it doesn't really matter to go through all of the mechanisms of how they work. But when you really think about those three peptides, BPC 157, it's really a tailored peptide to really focus on ligaments, tendons, and joints. It's a very, very good peptide for that area. Then you have CJC 1295, great peptide for muscle composition. All right, worked really well. And then AOD 9604, really, really good peptide for fat removal. So these were dialed in, very specific peptides. And just recently, the FDA lifted this. I don't know what that means, though, because that would mean that the FDA would have to put it back on a list before the compounding pharmacies start picking this up again?
Yeah.
So so I've seen these, I've been with Weight Loss and Vitality now for 2 years, and I've seen these in patients' charts, and they ask about them, and sermorelin's really cornered the market in my experience. Where did these peptides go?
They just got removed from this. So the FDA 3 years ago came out and said that there was a safety concern based off of there was inadequate studies, partially true, that they could not guarantee the immunological function of these peptides. They were concerned about what it would do to the immune system.
Sure. Okay.
So they took it off of the list that made it available for compounding pharmacies to make, and that's what opened the door to the other market.
For the next problem. And this is what I want to jump into. I was just about to say that. Where did they go? The patients that were motivated found them. Okay. And that's where the big problem happened. So these peptides should be legitimately sourced through either your retail pharmacies or through compounding pharmacies. These are legitimate pharmacies, right? But now what happened is that research grade peptides, not intended for human use, are being sold under the guise of, they protect themselves by saying that each vial is intended for research purposes, but they are very heavily marketing themselves for human use. And so this is what you see on social media advertisements, social media influencers, and there are certain ways to get certain peptides from foreign sources. And the problem with this is that if there is no oversight from a pharmacy standpoint, because you have to remember, pharmacies are controlled entities in the United States, right? There are certain sterility requirements, like certain things have to be compounded under a hood. There's certain concentration requirements, things like labeling requirements. These research grade, they could be in a garage, a warehouse. Like, we don't know where they're coming from. They could be from foreign countries. They could just, if you're lucky, it's just saline and there's nothing in there. If you're really unlucky, it has 70% endotoxin or is unsterile, things like that. This is where the market has become a little bit dangerous. And that's where we're trying to caution our, listeners about. It's like, it might feel like you're getting a little bit of FOMO. Everyone's using them. Just be cautious. Just be careful. It is our strong preference that you use FDA approved, pharmacy sourced, provider guided peptide therapy.
And I think the peptide boom is really, I get a lot of articles that I'm reading, and I got a lot of questions from patients. The peptide potential is just exponential. So people are really excited about it, but we just have to put safety first.
Yeah.
I had a really good patient that I've known for a long time request a specific sleep peptide, and I just don't know a lot about them. So I did some research. Reputable pharmacy, everything checked out. I ordered them. They were a supplement. So like an oral supplement. We could have a whole other episode on how how nutritional supplements and medical supplements are also somewhat unregulated. And it's kind of the wild, wild west, but
not somewhat like basically unregulated.
Unregulated.
Yeah.
So the point was it came, and it's really this proprietary blend that's big question mark. It's the bottom line was it's safe. It's not going to hurt the patient, but is it going to do anything for the?
It might be like a waste of their money.
Yeah, and I didn't feel great about it, and I don't really think he got the results he was looking for with a sleep peptide. But the marketing is so strong.
Right.
I know from my experience with GLPs that the gold standard for peptide administration is subcutaneous injection into the adipose.
Yeah.
So already taking a pill, I was kind of scratching my head. Suboptimal.
Yeah.
The other thing I've seen a lot on social media, my Instagram, is a tanning peptide that tans your skin.
Right.
And I just have so many questions about how that works. And
there's
the
just too many. I personally can't keep track of all of them. There's just like too many. I don't think peptides should be. They're going to head in one of two directions, right? They're going to either get shuttled into the supplement space where it continues to be heavily unregulated and people can just kind of experiment on themselves. There's a part of me that likes the patient autonomy component of that, but these are tapping into known pathways, right?
Absolutely.
They can be quite powerful.
Yeah.
And that's the part of me that says, you know what? They should be more shuttled into the pharmacological space. Yes, they're short chain amino acids. They might be very easy to synthesize, which they are. That's the beauty of it. But because of the profound effects, the downstream effects of them tapping into known biological systems and homeostatic mechanisms, I do think they need FDA oversight and pharmacological oversight.
I missed one peptide when I was going over. Another FDA approved one is PT141, which is specifically tied to libido and sexual health. All right, so that's one that is actually still available.
And you'll prescribe that subcutaneous?
Yeah, subcutaneous injection. Yeah.
Awesome.
It works. Yeah, that's a good one. When we think about this long term, I blame the FDA. I'm sorry. I mean, it's just dumb. And these patients the patients want this, and so there's a choice, right? You can either, people are going to get it. And why can't we can do it safely, or we can do it unsafe? And by the FDA coming out and blocking this and taking it off the list and not allowing patients for access, all you're doing is just opening the door for unfavorable outcomes, ultimately. And I get it. It's a kind of a double-edged sword because you don't have the long clinical studies on this stuff, and you don't know, they haven't went through 3 clinical studies, and you don't know what the 10-year, 20-year effect is of this stuff. But at the same, you do know what the effect is when 67% of the available online peptides have endotoxins in them. And that ultimately doesn't end well for the patient. And, that's a tough call. I mean, ultimately, and then you have some new ones coming, like some other ones that just have never even been available through the compounding pharmacies, like TB500, amazing peptide, MOTC, changing the dysregulation of the mitochondrial for an energy perspective. I mean, it's just probably one of the best peptides ever to be made for the aging person. I'm not endorsing anyone going out there and getting it. All right, full disclosure, but I mean,
but we would like to see them. I'd like to see more research, more
absolutely.
Trials, more it would be nice to see this stuff get vetted out and get better dosing protocols and better sources and better ways to synthesize them, better ways to administer them. Like, people are interested. They are interested in this.
And when patients come to me asking for them, I don't knock them for going down the Reddit rabbit hole online. They're advocating for their health and well-being and longevity. And I want to be a resource for them when I can prescribe them safely when they become available. And I'm optimistic. I think that the peptide boom is here, and I'm hoping that these peptides will get approved because there is so much potential.
Yeah, somebody's going to have to pick it up though and run it through the studies.
Yeah, that's the big question.
Yeah.
The current, and I'm curious, like, as to what will change. Like, either it's not going to happen, or like the FDA will have to change the way they approve drugs. I think that might be the next step, because this is a little bit of a tangent, but for example, female testosterone therapy, right? We have women on testosterone.
Oh yeah.
Celebrity women on testosterone. Social media, postmenopausal women are on testosterone. No FDA approved testosterone.
Why?
It's absolutely bananas.
Decades and decades of women have been on testosterone.
Right.
I just saw the urologist testify in front of the FDA about this. I sent you the link, right? And she
Rachel Rubin.
Yeah, she was advocating for, like, what is the problem? She goes, I got 1,000 patients in clinic on testosterone, and they're all men. Believe it or not, women also have testosterone, and it's just this disjointed concept.
But unless a pharma giant picks up the project, like as it stands today with the FDA, unless a pharma giant stands up and says, we're going to run trials, like the whole exhaustive multi-billion-dollar process of running trials on testosterone formally under the guise of FDA approval, then it won't get approved. Like, that's the current problem.
Yeah.
And I think peptides are in the same situation. So patients have just taken the power into their own hands.
It's an access issue for sure.
And a safety problem now on top of it. You got both problems. Anything else to share?
No, that's all.
I'm excited to see what's to come. I think peptide therapy is a modality of therapy that should be explored. I'm optimistic, but definitely be careful and just be smart about it.
I believe it's going to be a part of precision medicine moving forward.
For
sure. I think in 20 years from now, we're going to have a peptide that's going to essentially be designated to treat almost any problem that we have in the body. Yeah. That's where I think this is going.
I think that's the most optimistic view, and that's nice.
Yeah.
And if you are interested in Sermorelin or another peptide therapy or a compounded GLP, make sure you know where you're getting it from and who you're getting it from and what's in it.
Yep.
Great talk. All right. And if you're enjoying the show, make sure you click the subscribe button so you don't miss the next episode, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for joining us on Vitality Unfiltered with David Bauder. Addressing norms, busting myths, and uncovering health realities for a more vibrant life today. For more expert insights and real talk, make sure to subscribe and join us next time.